CC for remembering my name in the email that Samantha left me on the question. I was very happy.
That's integration.
That was something. I wanted to excuse myself and go, oh, let me go and rest a bit. Now, only someone because everyone will be asked the same question. I said, oh, no.
We are live, huh?
We are live now. Thank you. Thank you so much. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this program, which we termed the Reframing Corporate Perspectives series. And this is our second edition of this conversation that we are co-facilitating as UNICAF University in Zambia, Transform Your Performance, and the Center for Organization Leadership and Development. It's humbling to be engaging in such conversations as we try to move away from traditional ways of knowledge exchange towards a more generative model of engagement in such conversations. So our approach to these conversations is more of a conversational, where we have a host who will be moderating the conversation, and we have three panelists that the host will introduce in a while. And members are free to ask questions at any moment in time, but we might need to do that in an orderly manner to avoid interruptions. So you can send your question in the chat box, or you can show by raising your hand if you need to make a contribution, or if you want to make a comment or to raise a question, and we'll direct that question to Ms. Samantha Sales, who is moderating this session. My name is Dr. Justin Chinoperekwe. I'm the CEO and Director of Center for Organization Leadership and Development, Zimbabwe, and I'm dialing in from Abu Dhabi at this moment in time. Our session today focuses on practical integration of employees in an organization as a performance strategy, and it's a follow-up conversation on what we discussed during our last session last month. And we are co-facilitating this session with UNICAF University, particularly UNICAF University in Zambia, and represented here by Dr. Nathan Musonda, who will be introduced in a while. So you can visit UNICAF University website to learn more about the academic programs and the professional programs that they are offering, and a host of other benefits that align to the programs that they offer. We are also co-facilitating this session with Transform Your Performance, represented here by Madam Regina Huber. The focus of Transform Your Performance is on leadership development, and you can also visit the website to learn more about what Madam Regina is doing as a multicultural transformational leadership coach. And you can also connect with her on LinkedIn to engage more on any future conversations regarding this subject and many more that she's engaged in. And I'm here with the Center for Organization Leadership and Development, also represented by Tsitsi Chundu in Zimbabwe. And we are involved in organization leadership and development, professional certification. And may I request us to mute our microphones, please? You can connect with us as well on LinkedIn as the Center for Organization Leadership and Development, as we engage in a whole lot of other conversations that we facilitate. And Tsitsi here, who is representing COLD, works with Premo Capio, Zimbabwe. And you can connect with Dr. Elizabeth Mamukwa to learn more about what they are doing in the field of human resource management. So I take this opportunity to welcome everyone to today's session, Reframing Corporate Perspectives. through practical integration of employees in organization as a performance strategy. We live in a system where organizations are open systems, and the integration of employees is quite fundamental to leading sustainable strategic change in these organizations. So may I request the panelists to be on video, and if possible, everyone else can follow the conversation. Do raise questions in the chat box or raise your hand for any contributions. I will hand over this program to Ms. Samantha Nadine Sales to take us through the conversation. Samantha, over to you.
Hello, Dr. Justin. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Let me just share my screen. Yes, Doctor, can you see my screen, Doctor?
Yes, we can.
Yes, so good day, everyone. Welcome to the second session in the Reframing Corporate Perspective series. My name is Samantha Nadine Abuda Sales, and I am honored to be your anchor for today. In this OLDN TV live discussion, we'll continue to tackle the topic of practical integrations of employees in an organization as a performance strategy. Now, to talk about this topic, like Dr. Johnston has mentioned, we are privileged to be joined by three revered speakers. The first is Dr. Nathan Masinda of UNICAF University in Zambia. He is the Dean of Academics and a consultant, researcher, and lecturer in production and operations management, quality management, project management and supply chain and procurement management. He has over 25 years of experience in the corporate and academic world, and he is also a proud member of the Institute of Directors, or IOD. Our second guest is Ms. Titi Chundu, who is an HR consultant for Primo Capio in Zimbabwe. She is also a teaching assistant in Africa Leadership and Management Academy. And on top of all of this, I believe Dr. Justin mentioned it also, she is an esteemed member of the Organization Leadership and Development Network, or OLDN. And she is also a COLD consultant for the continuous development of people. Our third guest is Ms. Regina Huba, who is the CEO of Transform Your Performance. She's a multicultural transformational leadership coach and a global inspirational speaker for topics such as humanizing the workplace through inclusive leadership. Ms. Huba is also the author of the book Speak Up, Stand Out, and Shine, and her signature framework, Powerful Leadership Transformation. So before we dive into the subject matter, I'd like to give our speakers the opportunity to address or greet the audience, if you would like. Dr. Nathan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Samantha, and good afternoon, or also good morning to everyone, and good evening to everyone joining in. And welcome to this the second session. And I think those who joined us last month, you appreciated, and I can assure you, even this today's session, you're going to very much appreciate and enjoy it. So welcome to this session.
Ms. Titi?
Thank you very much, Samantha, and a good welcome to all our guests. And I trust that we're going to have a good conversation today. Thank you.
Ms. Regina, any opening notes?
Yes, thank you so much, Samantha and Dr. Justin, for your warm introductions. And I look forward to this session. I welcome everybody attending. We look forward to receiving your questions and to also hear your comments.
All right, so I'd also like this opportunity to take this opportunity to remind our guests to please like the OLTN TV and COLD page, share this video and all the other videos and events that we have, and please feel free to comment any of your questions. Now, today's session will be formatted a little differently from our first session. We have made it a point to have less questions and more room for discussion, which is why I encourage everyone to comment up your questions or your comments, and we'll try to go through them in between each discussion point. Now, to give a brief recap of the first session, which was focused on practical integration also, there was a clear consensus that practical integration of employees in an organization is needed by all organizations and all departments in organizations. And in some common themes that we had were trust, communication, employee loyalty and satisfaction, leadership, and change. So now we turn into other angles. And the first question that I'd like to address to the speakers is, what are your opinions on the feasibility of practical integration, specifically deceiving costs, which may seem immaterial, but are actually significant in aggregate? So, Ms. Regina, let's go to you first.
Yes, so we talked last time about the impact of practical integration on the bottom line. Yes, we talked about how it creates greater engagement, which leads to higher productivity and creativity, which then results in more innovative approaches or products, more effective and productive teams. And it has an impact on the overall organizational culture, which again benefits the corporate image, the product image, the market power, and the image of the company to attract top talent. So I think these are all wonderful benefits. And if we don't have them, of course, this has an impact on, or a negative effect on our market image, on our market power, and also on our competitive edge, which will be weakened. I believe that practical integration is worth being made a part of performance reviews, or really an official goal, just like any other business goal. This will incentivize the leaders at all levels to consider this part of their responsibility. Yes, so this people need to understand that we might not see the impact on the bottom line right away, but this is about sustainability. If we don't have sustainability in the long run, the business is not competitive and it is not sustainable.
Thank you, Ms. Regina. Ms. Titi, any insights on this question?
Thank you, Samantha. For me, practical integration is key, no matter how costly it might be. What I can then just say around the cost is that we must make sure that the processes and procedures that we are taking to integrate our employees, we do them in a very effective and efficient way. So practical integration for me is more like training and development. Training and development is costly in an organization. But there's no way we are going to sit back and say, we can't train, we can't develop people because it's costly for us. What is actually more costly is not to do those things. So I think at the end of the day, as costly as it might be, it pays off, like Regina have said. It's not an immediate, we get the results immediately. But of course, there are some immediate results, but in the long run, it pays off because it reduces the turnover rate. Because the moment an employee, remember last time we said, the moment an employee is fully integrated, they are part and parcel of the organization, and they are bringing their best to the organization, and the organization is developing as they are also developing. So we need to go for our practical integration. Thank you.
Samantha, may I add something to this point? I think there's a very important point that we just heard from Ms. Zizi. And this is around turnover cost, right? If I heard that correctly. So, that's why I consider it more as an investment rather than a cost, because the real question is, what is it costing companies to replace people who leave for another company where they feel more valued? What's the attrition cost? The turnover cost, that is a real cost. Here in the US, according to the Society of HR Management, the cost of replacing a technical or leader level employee is 250% of their annual salary. What does that mean? Well, for an entry, for somebody who has a salary of, let's just say 125,000, the cost to replace that person would be 312,500. That's huge. And for an entry-level employee, this cost drops actually to 50%. But still, let's say they make $50,000 a year. I'm using, US numbers here right now. But you can do this proportionally in any country. But if that person makes $50,000 a year, then the cost is $25,000. And Gallup, which you may be familiar with, has estimated that a disengaged employee costs an organization about $3,400 for every $10,000 of salary. That's 34%. Yes. Gallup also estimates that over 17% of the US workforce is actively disengaged. And I don't have those numbers for the African continent, but I think it might be somewhere in that range. I really don't know. But what this means is, that these 17% contribute very, very little. And maybe, my colleagues here on the panel have some idea of what that looks like in Africa. So, but here in the US, this means that if you have a headcount of 100, you're paying 17 of these people for nothing because you're not engaging them, because you're not having practical integration, right? So yes, effort is required, of course. That is, again, it's not going to happen on its own, and it has to be consistent. It's not a one-time and done, but an ongoing process. It requires fluid, transparent communication. It requires bonding activities, proactive encouragement by team leaders, and of course, buy-in by all levels of management, including the top level. And it has to be lived by all levels. Lip service is not enough. It should also be reflected in performance reviews and be made an official goal, as I said earlier. So yes, effort is necessary, but again, I'd say it is an investment rather than a cost. Why? Because it will pay off.
Yes, ma'am. And being an accounting student, I'd like to say that it's a typical example of expenses versus capitalizing an asset, because capitalizing an asset is adding value to something that is needed and something that reaps benefits. But looking at practical integration costs as costs or expenses are actually not as relevant as you would think. Dr. Nathan, what do you think about this discussion of expenses?
Yeah, thank you very much, Samantha. I think Regina has brought in very good statistics here, and she has given us a very good homework to go back and look at those statistics. And I volunteer to go and look at those statistics. But yeah, I think they should be more, if I'm not mistaken, as compared to maybe the statistics that you have brought, especially if we have even to convert that into some of the African local currencies. I think it will be so high. It's quite a huge amount there. Like, I like where you have said it's an investment, and it's true, I agree. It's an investment because it has to pay back at one point or the other. But to answer your question, Samantha, it's a very interesting question, but let me try to use another word, because you use the feasibility there. I think, let me try to use the word usefulness in the same way that you have used feasibility to answer this question that you have asked. From my own opinion, practical integration, Samantha, is very important, like every speaker has mentioned there, and it is very useful. Now, I'll use the word useful in an organization, because I think if you remember very well in the last session that we had, it was mentioned even by Cici that we all agreed, and also mentioned from the onset that it's very important to have a practical integration, because it's also a marketing tool, like we also discussed even the last time for an organization. It makes the employees feel at home. They are part and parcel of that organization. Those suggestions that they are bringing in on the table, if they are approved, they are taken by the organization, they feel so good. And in that way, they are going to contribute more to the organization and also contribute to the employee retention. And they feel like they own that organization. There is that training or a certain culture that they are, learning, and they become part of that organization. But like it was mentioned, now I wanted to say there are some costs, but I think Regina said, no, not really the cost, but there is some investment. Yes, of course, there is some investment, like it has been mentioned there. And when you look at this investment, some people might say maybe it's immaterial. No. We have to realize and appreciate that this is a very important thing that we have to do. We need to remember that in every organization, if you have to go for an integration there, that cost has to be realized, which has to be paid back, like we have just discussed. Like mentioned by the other speakers, this cost of that investment, whether we like it or not, it has to be seen and it has to be there. Some of the organizations, you know, they take their employees for some more training, advanced training. That's also an investment. They are now part of that organization. They appreciate that culture, that tradition of that organization, that it becomes now a big cost if that person leaves and goes to another another organization. Then that investment will be like, oh, it's a share waste of that investment. So that integration should always be there. The employees should be part and parcel of the growth of that organization. I think that's what I can say, Samantha. Thank you.
Yes, doctor. Yes, and I totally agree. Like Mr. Gina said, it's more of adding to the sustainability of a company when you invest and you use when you allocate expenses for the practical integration of employees. Now, I see that there are some members. Oh, okay. The audience member put down his hand. I thought they had a question. Now, moving on. Last session, we spoke a lot about how employees handle changes, especially when we look at the current situation where there are so many uncertainties in everybody's life, even in their professional lives. So in relation to this, I'd like to ask you about the topic of managers' resistance to change. So what advice would you give to a manager who feels threatened by change that practical integration may bring, especially changes that are suggested or brought up by more junior employees or colleagues? Ms. Titi, let's go to you first.
Thank you, Samantha. For me, I think change is the survival of an organization. So managers need to appreciate and understand that organizations need to be changing. Remember, an organization is a living organism. So there is no way we need to be static. So rather than focus on who is bringing the change and where is the change is coming from, I think managers need to be in a position where they respond and integrate the change. So that's how I look at it, to say there is no way you can do without change in an organization. So managers need to stand at that level. It's not like the employee brings in something, then you are implementing it today. You then sit down with other managers in your strategic meeting, you unpack that whole idea that has been brought and you say, okay, how does this affect our company? How can we best do this? So managers should not be afraid of what is being brought by their juniors. Remember also that the juniors are also the implementers usually of whatever is happening in the organization. The managers are there usually on the strategic level, but the implementers, the line managers, are the ones that are on the ground and most likely appreciate and understand the change that can actually transform the organization from an operational perspective. So I think for managers, they need to appreciate that organizations are living organisms and the change actually brings the survival and like Regina has put the sustainability of an organization. Now, most organizations have been forced to fold because they did not integrate or accept the changes that were coming. They were standing and saying, this is how we do things. But the world is really moving so fast. So managers need to actually put their ears on the ground from wherever the change is coming from. They need to sit down, look at it, and try to implement it in their organizations. Thank you.
Thank you also, Ms. Titi. And I agree, an organization is organic. It's a being in itself. And if you're not willing to change, it's going to snap. So what about you, Dr. Nathan? What are your thoughts on managers' resistance or possible resistance?
Samantha, managers' resistance to change, let me maybe just start by saying that change in every organization at some point might not be very much welcome. Very few people accept change just there and then. So we can understand the manager's resistance to change. It's not easy. And it's not easily appreciated. And like we all know, no one welcomes change so easily. It takes time. It reminds me, Samantha, of a program I was listening to over the weekend. It was a short documentary on family issues. Then the speaker mentioned a very good example that it took me time to say, I started reflecting on this and said, this is a very good example that this person has brought. what did he say? You know, he said change is not easily acceptable also in a family circle, especially after, you know, a newborn baby is born in a family. You know, most of the people, you know, okay, maybe the parents, the mother and the father, they've been looking forward to that baby, a new member of the family. They've done all the things, they've prepared everything at home, and they're welcoming a newborn baby, a new member of the family. But the speaker mentioned that the siblings are the one that sometimes have a problem. The siblings will start maybe complaining. And why do some of the siblings complain? Some will start, you know, feeling bad, having that jealousy, that the time and attention now has been taken away from them, is now being given to the new member of the family, this new baby. So they feel like, no, this change that has happened in the house has brought a lot of you know, changes for them as well, because they have lost that you know, time and attention from the parents. And this speaker went on even saying that sometimes, you know, the siblings will be with this new member of the family, the baby, the parents are not there, the baby starts crying, they don't care, they're just watching that baby because they don't mind about that baby. You know, that is change. Now, Samantha, if this is in a family setup, what about in an organization? Because in the family setup, like we always know, they say blood is thicker than water. You know, the siblings and the new member of the family, they share blood. But what about in an organization at work where we don't share any blood? Maybe it's just the water that we share, you know? So a junior person in that organization look at the manager, and then maybe that junior person brings out a very good suggestion. The manager will say, no, I don't want to accept this. I don't want this suggestion. And the question is, why do some of these managers, you know, avoid some of the suggestions that are coming from the juniors? It's a good question that we can ask. Some of them think if they accept a certain suggestion from maybe a junior person, then they're not going to be feared because they want to be feared. But we all know that at work, in an organization, a man is not supposed to be feared. Okay, of course, it's supposed to be respected because of the hierarchy. It's more senior than this one, not to be feared. Some of these you know, managers, they think that if they accept any suggestion from any junior person, they'll be looked down, you know, and the organization will start looking at them like they're inferior. That's not the way it's supposed to be. The best thing that a manager should do is to accept change, respect change. Organizations, Samantha, have grown into very big organizations, and have even made some improvements in their profitability because of some of the suggestions that come from the employees. And some of these suggestions come from very junior person in the system. But if they appreciate them, they accept those suggestions and they implement and adopt them, they see a lot of changes. So to such managers, we can say, please accept change. Please, you know, be part of the change. Accept some suggestions from the juniors. They are going to make your organization grow. I think that's what I can see on the change and resistance to change from the, you know, from these managers.
All right, Dr. Nathan, I agree. Just like Ms. Titi said, change is an eventual thing. It's going to come, and it's the only permanent thing in the world, like the very common quote says. Ms. Regina, any thoughts on managers' resistance to change?
Yeah, briefly. So I agree that fear is unproductive. It doesn't inspire participation or creative contribution. So we are missing out on potentially awesome ideas that would be great for business. Yes. And these people also, as we said last time in our session, then might end up leaving and go somewhere where their ideas are actually listened to and where they are valued. And Samantha, you just said it, right? Change is the only constant. And in my opinion, change is transformation, change is evolution. And it's an opportunity also for the managers to grow personally, to enhance their own competence. Yeah, it's almost like it's complementary training. And we're going to talk about, I think, shared power a little bit later. So I'm going to keep this short. But what I wanted to add is working in a stagnating organization doesn't really further your own career growth and advancement, dear managers. So, you know, and also change may bring uncertainty, yes, but we don't always realize that stagnation also brings uncertainty. And I'll leave it here for now.
All right, for now, because we're going to discuss it a little more in the next discussion point. But before we move on, ma'am, there are a few questions. So Mr. Tandekai, he typed into the chat that approximately more than 2,000 plus research projects have been published on the role of leadership towards employee performance, but the engagement rates are still low in Africa. What is it that might be missing in organizations? Who would like to answer or address this question?
Well, one idea that I want to contribute, although of course I'll let my African colleagues here speak to this, is that oftentimes, and I think that's the same all over the world, it's the missing buy-in by top management, because it has to be lived, as I said before, by all levels of management. We have to see it and not just hear it. Yes, so we really have to see its implementation, and they have to be role models. That's what I would like to contribute.
Yeah, maybe in addition, yeah, please, yeah, thank you, Samantha. In addition to what Regina said, I think the involvement of the top management, I think I'll come and talk about that in one of the points that we have as we continue discussing. You come and see that most of the time we have a problem of the top management, getting involved in what is happening. And if the CEO up there is not giving that support to whatever is happening at the bottom there, everyone, even the assistant to the CEO, the juniors to the CEO, they are going to follow the same. It becomes a culture, and we accept that this is the way it's supposed to be, but that's not the way it's supposed to be. I think that's one of the contributing factors, like Regina said, but I'll come and say more on that one as we continue.
Yeah, so we see a more of a top to bottom approach. Yes, Ms. Titi.
I think the other thing that is happening in Africa is that practical integration is not really systemized. It's not becoming part of the organization systems. I've seen organizations which have departments, maybe strategic or research and development and stuff like that. This is where every employee in the organization can throw in their idea without threatening the leadership or the CEO. So what I think needs to happen in Africa is that when we put it as part of the system, we have a unit where everybody can throw in all their comings, and then the people deal with them there. It becomes less personal. It becomes less confrontational. It's put in that pool where things can then be worked out. So I think that's what is also missing in Africa, and where companies that have actually done that, they've really brought in a whole lot of development, new products, and they are making huge impact in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you also. So a more formal process. Yes, Dr. Nathan, please.
Just add on Ceci's point. It's a very valid and wonderful point there. I just want to give an example. I think Samantha today will be giving a lot of examples.
It's okay. It's wonderful, yeah. Dr. Nathan. Helps in understanding.
This organization, where they add a suggestion box, that they want to receive some changes, some improvement in this suggestion box. But the suggestion that we are there in that box, whenever they open, of course, no one was putting their names. They were, almost like insulting the CEO. We don't want him. We don't want him. So look at that top manager, top CEO. He will say, "Please, effective today. I don't want the suggestion box. Get rid of them." And he's hindered in change. And even those who are very good suggestions, they won't bring them because already they have been asked not to be suggesting, and that suggestion box is no longer there. And who has contributed to that? It's because of the system itself, the culture itself. I just thought I can just add on to Ceci's point there. Very wonderful.
Yes, of course. So a little more encouragement for actual integration and engagement from the employees. There is another question from Ms. Penelope Kalema. He's asking, how would you handle the boss who feels threatened by their junior? It's quite a heavy question. It's a little bit, we've skimmed over it, but are there any additional thoughts for this question specifically?
Interesting. How do we handle a boss who feels threatened by the junior? You see, it's a very good question and this is a practical thing. It has happened before. So we've seen some of the organization where the boss looks at the junior is threatened. I know of some organization where the boss has got maybe a lower qualification as compared to a junior. Then this junior also, if he's not very careful, she's not careful, start growing, you know, the wings. I'm more educated as compared to my boss there. And in the end, you find that sometimes the boss will make it very difficult to work. The junior will find it very difficult to even work, and the junior will be frustrated at the end and maybe even leave that organization. But that's not what we want. There should be that unity, there should be that working together, that cooperation, and everyone has to appreciate what the other person has achieved in an organization. We are all like, you know, we're like a body in an organization. This one has got their own strengths and weaknesses. When we bring the strengths together, we make a very successful organization. We're like a body, you know. I've got my hands, I've got my legs. For me to go from one point to the other, I need my legs. For me to go and get some food to eat, all right, I need my hands. These have to work together. So even in an organization, those bosses, those managers, they should work hand in hand with their juniors, no matter what differences that they have. If they have on their mind that they want to achieve the organization goals and objectives, then they need to do that. They need to work together.
So let me read this comment before I ask Ms. Noisa, because I believe that she raised her hand. So let me read this comment out. Let me read this comment out. Somebody agreed. 1 second. Please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Could you please mute yourself, members of the audience? Thank you so much. There is a comment that says that they agree that the most junior employees in a workplace, that the most junior employee is a junior in the workplace, but a CEO of their family, which they run exceptionally well. So managers should tap into that wealth of knowledge. I believe she's trying to say that there is a lot of knowledge, potential knowledge in junior positions. So Ms. Noisa, I believe you have a question. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask the speakers?
Thank you very much, Samantha, and thank you for everyone for this Reframing Corporate Perspective series. I want to apologize in advance in case I may have missed it because I joined 10 minutes into the session. But I just wanted to find out whether, you know, under the COVID circumstances that we are all under, where employees are out of reach because they're working online, something that no one is totally accustomed to. And in that, they then feel kind of disengaged, and the way of managing performance of such employees presupposes that there was already a trust relationship between the line manager, if that is who is looking, or the employer, if that is who is looking. So I just thought that I should just touch base with yourselves to say, if it is relevant to this discussion, could we maybe touch on it and receive some guidance from peers, you know, in the topic on the matter? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Noisa. I believe that this topic was briefly touched in the first session. I believe that we talked about the restrictions in general that have made remote operations more difficult. But Ms. Titi, Dr. Nathan, or Mr. Gina, is there anything that you would like to comment on about this topic?
So I thank you for the question. I really appreciate this question. I do recommend that you watch session number 1. There's a recording still available. You will receive a lot of discussion on trust building. Of course, it should have happened before, but it's also still possible to do it now because we have to start somewhere, right? And I think what's really important in this particular situation, even more critical than before, is transparent and ongoing consistent communication, making an even better, a greater effort to stay connected through regular team meetings, through follow-ups, and not so much to really check on every single thing. It's not about micromanagement. It's about really transmitting and conveying the feeling of you trust them and you rely on them. Yes. So, and then also establishing the mechanisms and the dynamics and the structures for that feedback to happen. So I think if you go back to session number 1, you will hear a lot of content on trust building. So I'd recommend that.
Ms. Titi, Dr. Nathan, any additional notes? Yes.
Yeah, just to add, I think just to also emphasize the point that Regina has brought in, the issue of communication. There needs to be very scheduled, clear platforms of communication, and ensuring that communication is done well and perfectly on those platforms. So for instance, if we are saying Monday morning, we do meeting, Zoom meeting, let's stick to Zoom meeting, not WhatsApp messages or anything. That improves that connectivity. But also to add on to say, where most nations are beginning to open up in terms of other social activities, but still working from home, I think it's high time we need to open up to social activities as well. And of course, observing the protocols by the World Health Organization. But I've seen here in Africa, in Zimbabwe, most organizations are beginning to loosen up and begin to interact, the sports, the wellness groupings, and, things like that. That also, even if it's not really, like Regina is saying, micromanaging, saying what is happening is the assignment being done, but that whole idea that they can meet for a wellness activity, they can meet as family, improves the integration. So when there's integration on that social level, it then boils down into integration within the actual work being done. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Titi, I remember you stressing on a point about communication and making it an actual structural thing, because you said that there are times where an email would be sent and then the reply would be on WhatsApp, and you said that these things should be a little more formal so that the integration really is there. So let me read 2 comments before we move in. The first is from Dr. Christine. She said that junior employees should be strategic too. Senior employees are not demigods. Do not be reactive, but find better ways to getting to the senior. Another one is from Miss or Mr. Sachin. It's a quote from Steve Jobs. It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. So this is actually in line with our next topic point. A very interesting statement that relates to nearly everything that we've discussed so far is something that Ms. Regina mentioned in the first session. Ma'am, you said, quote, more power in shared power. So what are some ways that this concept can be further understood and accepted by managers? Ms. Regina.
Yes, thank you, Samantha. So shared success is sustainable success, yes? It's geared toward long-term success for the entire team, for the division and organization. Again, this is about engagement. An engaged team is more successful. If the manager is a power grabber and only concerned about his own position and his own authority, that's a typical fear concept that we heard about before, right? Then what happens is that the people in his team are less vested in the team's success for several reasons. And one is that they may not see evidence of their career path advancing. That doesn't only have to do with promotions. Advancing a career is also about being acknowledged as a valuable resource, as a valuable human being. And one way is being given power, like decision-making power. Less decision-making power means less accountability. And I think this is a really important point. Shared decision-making leads to automatic accountability, whereas imposed decisions do not. Why? Because if I participated in a decision, for example, a decision on a specific way to push the project forward, then I will be more prepared to justify that decision through my work, right? So I will do my best to make that decision work. And I wanted to work out because I was involved in the decision to do it in this way. On the other hand, if somebody tells me to do something in a certain way, then I may not see why. And I may not even understand why. And I also don't have any reason to justify the decision. So when team members feel more important and when they are asked for input and their input is valued, they feel more motivated to proactively contribute to the success of what they provided input for. It's only logical, right? And this generates better results for the team, and better team results revert back to the manager and his reputation and success. So it's going in a circle. Yeah, so it's really a win-win when we include the team and give every single person that works with us a piece of that power. I always also say that, you know, power over others is not real power. It's our inner power, and that's what we also want to share with others and want to have them a stake in, so they can participate in the success. I wanted to quickly also go back to the previous question where somebody asked about how should they address a manager or when they feel threatened.
Yes.
I believe that, you know, to answer it from that person's perspective, from that junior's perspective, I would seek a conversation where I show the manager what's in it for them. You know, why should they listen to me? It's always about what's in it for them. So really position your suggestions, position your participation in a way that benefits them. There's always a way to do that. And last time we talked a lot about conversational intelligence, which is a modality that I also use in my coaching, for my coaching clients. And it's very, very effective in that way. It always depends on how you position things. How do you phrase your suggestions, you know, and how do you show up for it? So I wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Regina. Ms. Titi and Dr. Nathan, are there any comments on the concept of having more power in shared power before I read 2 comments on the chat?
For me, you can go ahead and read the chat. I think
All
it
right.
was really well explained. Yeah.
Yes, so there is a message from Ms. Sibusiso or Mr. and Mrs. Sibusiso. He or she is saying, thank you so much for the insight, as I am a new management position. Being young at a senior management needs guidance, as I might miss certain aspects. It is hard to engage at times with a team as one of the youngest, but holds a senior position. So this is a valuable insight, I believe, to take notice on junior inputs. So thank you. This is the purpose of why we're having discussions like these, and we're sharing our opinions in a platform like this one. Another one is from Ms. Noisa, the person that asked the question about remote operations. She said that not sure what the new way of online work will do to traditional hierarchy in organizations, as the new and more networked organization seems to be dismantling the said hierarchies. I believe we touched on the hierarchical structure also in the first session. So before we move on, I'd like to ask Mr. George, who has his hand up, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask the questions of the speakers. Mr. George, would you like to unmute? Okay, maybe we can go back to Mr. George to our last discussion point, I believe. The last question that we have on the list. So over the practical integration sessions, we've been focusing on a lot of positives on the concept of practical integration of employees in the organization. So to ensure that we have a more well-balanced discussion, let me ask you this question. What are some of the roadblocks to practical integration, and what are some general guidelines to overcome them? Ms. Titi, would you like to begin?
Oh, I think what I've seen to be maybe, I don't know whether to call it a roadblock per se, but maybe hiccup, is sometimes when the lines are not drawn well, or when there's no clarity as to what should be done, there are then some employees in the team who can be very domineering. You know, for them, practical integration is their personal integration, and they can take a certain position which then do not allow, even when the managers allowing that integration and bringing in of ideas and stuff like that. But they kind of assume a certain high position that actually blocks others in the team. So for me, being in HR, I think I've seen that to be, one thing that actually affects or that can, reduce that seamless flow of integration of every employee. So what is key, I think, as a solution is to ensure that as we integrate, we are still maintaining role clarity. We are still maintaining good team spirit and good teamwork. We are still maintaining, that we want to integrate each and every of the employees. It's not just my personal integration that is key. So I think for me, that's what I have seen, that sometimes the managers have loosened up, the leadership has loosened up, but all of a sudden there's a second level of leadership that emanates from within the employees and kind of blocks the others. So I think the leadership then also need to be very watchful and try to moderate and see if each and every of the employees of the teams are being well integrated, and also the team leaders and also the line managers are also very key in terms of ensuring that there's a free flow of ideas and actions and procedures and operations within their departments. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tsitsi. Dr. Nathan, any thoughts on possible roadblocks?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Samantha, on the roadblocks to practical integration. I think I remember I said I'll mention this in one of these points that we are discussing. And the biggest roadblock that I've seen is a failure to gain senior management commitment. And this becomes a very big one because you notice that for integration to be very effective, Samantha, it's essential that these senior managers are committed to this goal. And more importantly, to be seen by everyone in an organization that they are committed. Okay, I can give a very practical example and something that I've noticed in the corporate world where I was working. This organization said, let's try to change how we look at the quality of our products and as well as our services. Then they said, what can we do? One of the junior persons said, let us introduce the ISO 9000 quality management system. The CEO, the top manager said, no, that's a very big cost. I don't want to get to lose money for nothing. Why should I invest in something that I'm going to make a loss? Of course, we know it requires money for you to invest in such a very good change in an organization like ISO 9000 quality management system. But if the junior person had gone to the senior person, explain this is how it is. These are examples of organizations that have invested in ISO 9000, and this is the change. And also maybe come up with an impact from a certain year to this year. This is the losses that they were making because they were making a poor product. The quality of the product was poor. But after they introduced the quality management system, this is now how much they are gaining. Then this senior person will say, I think you are right. Let us go for this change. Let us incorporate this. And then they start now training everyone, and everyone in the organization is going to accept that. So one of the biggest roadblocks, like I've mentioned, is failure to gain senior management commitment. You senior managers, please, let's get committed to the juniors' suggestions. Appreciate them. Bring them in your organization. They might be very helpful. Like I mentioned, that profit that you're not making, that loss that you are making, it's because maybe you are not giving room to that junior who's got a very bright idea for you to start making that profit. Because you are there as an organization to make profit. You're not an NGO. Every organization exists because they want to make money, to make a profit. And then at the end of the year, they declare some profit and they share that money. That's what we are there for. So please, senior people, listen to the junior ones. That's what I can say, Samantha, on that one.
Thank you, Dr. Nathan, to that message to most senior management. Ms. Regina, any comments on possible roadblocks or hiccups, like Ms. Tsitsi said?
Yes, I think again, it goes back to lack of trust in most organizations. When we don't have trust-based cultures and environments, integration cannot happen. Yes, so we are missing out on all the benefits of practical integration. Also, another concept that I want to bring in is, I believe the future is in co-creation. We should really move away from so much competition. People are competing against each other in companies and organizations. That is not productive. People are not only competing on an individual level, but also on a team level. I believe that co-creation is really the answer to that. And it's a long path, a long way to go. But we have to start now. And I did write an article on the new business consciousness that I believe is more desirable than what we have in most organizations all over the world right now. And it is on my website, and I can drop the link in the chat box for those who are interested in reading that article. So this new business consciousness, and this might be sound a bit extreme for some, but it is for me a new business consciousness of love, compassion, and co-creation. And if you're up for this topic, then I welcome you and invite you to read it.
Thank you, Ms. Regina. There's a very nice comment by Mr. Patrick. I believe he joined us also from the last session. He said that words are important in shifting mental frameworks. Time to get rid of old terms like management and junior positions. How we see things is what we create. And we completely agree with that, Mr. Patrick. Yeah. Are there any other comments? Dr. Christine said that competition is a cancer in a number of organizations. While it is good for some purposes, it's important to look at also. And there are some consensuses about what you've been saying, Ms. Regina, that trust building is a key step before integration is initiated. This enables the organization to initiate systems that result in them moving as a team. So if there are any other comments, we've come to the end of our list of discussion points or questions. Any other closing notes from our speakers? Dr. Nathan?
Yeah, it's good that we had a very good participation there, and then I think I enjoyed the questions, and I think we're improving every day, and I look forward to another session that is going to be arranged. And please, this will help us to improve in our organization as long as we're coming together. You bring out those suggestions that we have seen, and those comments, they keep us going, and together we can achieve something. Thank you very much for joining in.
Ms. Tsitsi?
Thank you. I think for me, practical integration need to be part and parcel of the organization strategy. It should not be like an aside. It should not be like something that, no, that we have the employees in the organization. Can we now work on integration? And I'm also thinking that it needs to really start from the very onboarding process. As the new employee comes in, let's begin the integration as well. Let's help them settle in and also be part and parcel of the organization. Like I said in the initial stage, it will save us, and Regina gave us those wonderful figures of the cost of hiring a new employee. So I think practical integration should be part of the strategy and should start from the onboarding process. Thank you, and thank you very much for all our guests for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Tsitsi. Yes, practical integration should no longer be an optional thing, but more a compulsory thing. Ms. Regina, any closing notes before we hand over to Dr. Justin?
Yes, I was just so busy commenting here in the chat box to all the great comments that I've been reading, but I've also been listening at the same time. So thank you so much for that opportunity. Yes, I would love to have more questions now that we have some more time. And thank you so much again, Samantha, for making this a very smooth conversation. Great job. Always appreciate you so very much. And I love this exchange with Dr. Nathan, Ms. Tsitsi, every single time. So let's do more of these. And yeah, I'm curious about the comments here. So many comments, so many awesome comments. I love to see all these wonderful attendees. We have a big group today, and I'm sure many more people are watching on Facebook. Please also comment on Facebook everywhere where you see this now or as a recording. And we really appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Gina. Thank you so much to the audience and for the participation. Please feel free to comment even if in the recording, because we review the recordings and we look at the comments even after the session for the incoming events. So Dr. Nathan, I'd like to pass on the floor to you for some closing notes on your side too.
It's been great, and we look forward to this third one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nathan. Thank you. Dr. Justin?
Thank you so much, Samantha. And thank you so much to everyone who attended today's session. We actually believe in emergent learning and practical integration of the audience. So as the conversation was going on, I was thinking of our next session to integrate the audience. And I've picked 3 names from the current audience, probably for our next conversation. It's something that we'll have to agree as a panel of this particular series. But provisionally, I have Madam Nosisa. You are going to be part of our conversation, either next month or in future after our meeting with the team that is here. I also picked Mr. Paul Nyausaru. We would want to have you as part of our panel in our next conversation as we integrate the audience. And I also picked Pumulo Muchu to be part of our next conversation. So please expect our email within the next 1 week for our next session on practical integration in the workplace. So thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this conversation. I like the issue that was raised by Madam Nosisa on hierarchical structures. If our organizations are still following hierarchies, and we have these nice boxes that we put people in, and we have these reports about organizational structures, it's high time we need to rethink those structures in our organizations. The world today is fast changing, as the panel has said. And those nice structures are good to present in organizations, but they are not sustainable. It's a conversation that we would want Mr. Patrick Trottier here to lead us on. And thank you so much, Mr. Patrick, for waking up at 5 a.m. in Canada to join this conversation once again. We appreciate you and would want you to be part of our conversation on demystifying these hierarchical structures in organizations. And the issue of co-creation is quite fundamental in organizations. If we still have in our organizations a small group of individuals who call themselves managers, they close themselves in a boardroom, they make decisions, and they come to impose those decisions on others, we are missing out on the 21st century kind of organization. So in our organizations, if we are true about transformation, it's high time that we practically integrate and move away from seeing a certain group of individuals who wear expensive clothes in the organizations as the only ones who can make decisions. Everyone in an organization needs to be integrated, and those in HR need to be serious about human resource development and human resource management. If we are managing people, we have to manage them differently in the 21st century. So the Reframing Corporate Perspective series seeks to embed practical interventions for our organizations, and we welcome anyone to be part of these conversations. It's not only about UNICAF University in Zambia or Center for Organizational Leadership and Development and Transform Your Performance. We are just facilitating this conversation and would want to work with as much organizations and individuals as possible. So please look out for our next conversation, which will come a month from today. And these will be 1-hour conversations. Probably we will have Madam Nosisa, Mr. Paul Nyausaru, and Ms. Pumulo Muchu leading that conversation if all goes well. Thank you so much. I'll ask you to close, Samantha.
Thank you, Dr. Justin. And with that, audience, participants, more like panel, we come to the end of our second session of our Framing Corporate Perspective series about practical integration of employees as a performance strategy. Dr. Nathan, Ms. Titi, and Ms. Regina, we are so grateful that you partake in these sessions. Fruitful information and your different perspectives make the whole event a holistically meaningful experience. And of course, again, I'd like to express our heartfelt thanks to all the viewers or the members of the audience who may be in this Zoom classroom or tuning in through the FB Live link. We expect to have you joining us again in the upcoming events. This is Samantha Nadine Abuda-Sales signing off, wishing everybody a very good day and please stay safe. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Samantha.
Thank you
And
so
It was a
much.
pleasure.
Happy HR Day to all of us, the HR.
Okay.
Yeah. Make it a beautiful day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nathan. Thank you, Regina.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.